This is a video series about human nature and its management. The wisest students of that subject in ancient times, and perhaps of all time, were known as the Stoics. Their recommendations about how to think and live do not resemble the grim lack of feeling we associate with the word Stoic in English today. The original Stoics were philosophers and psychologists of the most ingenious kind, and also highly practical. They offered solutions to the problems of everyday life, and advice about how to overcome our irrationalities that are still relevant and helpful today. The body of ideas known as Stoicism contains some of the finest and most durable wisdom of any age. The Stoics were deep students of desire, fear, status, emotion, and much else that bedeviled the human race thousands of years ago, and bedevils it still. They were philosophers of a down-to-earth sort, seeking by the force of their insights to free ordinary people from their sufferings and illusions. The Stoics had their limitations, of course. They held some beliefs that very few people do anymore, but in other ways they were far ahead of their times. They said a number of the best things that anyone ever has. The teachings of the Stoics are as interesting and valuable now as when first written. Maybe more so, since the passage of 2 millennia has confirmed so much of what they said. The idiocies, miseries, and other discouragements of our era tend to seem novel or modern. Hearing them described in a classical dialogue reminds us that they are nothing new. This itself was a claim of the Stoics, that the stories and problems of humanity don't change, but just put on new masks. The same can be said for the remedies. The most productive advice anyone offers nowadays, casually or in a bestseller, often amounts to a restatement or rediscovery of something the Stoics said with more economy, intelligence, and wit long ago. The Stoicism in this video series is a set of ideas developed by philosophers in ancient Greece and Rome. To repeat what was mentioned before, for it cannot be said enough, Stoicism did not mean for them what the word now means to us. Stoicism usually refers in current English to suffering without complaint. A Stoic also is sometimes thought to mean grim, or some imagine that the Stoics seek to remove themselves from the world. That is a philosophy of retreating to oneself, which is likewise inaccurate. The result of all this confusion is a minor nuisance for the student of our subject. Most people don't know what Stoicism is, but they don't know that they don't know. Stoicism got its name because Zeno of Citium, the founder of the school, did his teaching in a public colonnade or porch overlooking the Agora of Athens. This colonnade was called a Stoa in ancient Greek. Stoicism was known on this account as the philosophy of the porch, as opposed to the philosophy of the garden, that of Epicurus, or the philosophy of the academy, that of Plato, or the philosophy of the Lyceum, that of Aristotle, with each name referring to the place where the teachings of the school were imparted. So, if Stoicism sounds too forbidding because of the word's popular meaning, you could try telling your family that you are studying the philosophy of the porch. They might like that. Stoicism has come to us largely through the works of 3 philosophers who lived in the first 2 centuries AD: Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. Seneca and Marcus Aurelius were Romans. Epictetus was Greek, but he, too, lived and taught for part of his life in Rome. The works they left behind tend to be miscellaneous in character. Often they consist of notes written without much order, or sorted in ways no longer meaningful to most readers. nor are their writings cross-referenced. As a result, what any one of the Stoics taught about a given subject, let alone what they all said, cannot easily be found in one place. Seneca's comments on a topic might be spread over 3 letters and an essay. The same issue might be addressed at the start and end of the discourses attributed to Epictetus, or at a few different places in the journals of Marcus Aurelius. This arrangement can have its advantages. Sometimes unsystematic is better, but it is inconvenient for the student of Stoic thought who wants to see it as a whole, or to gain a sense of one writer's views, or the views of all of them, on a particular topic. Who were the most important Stoic philosophers? 3 Stoic writers dominate this series. On some topics all of them comment. On others, one specializes more than the rest. First, we have Seneca the Younger. He lived from about 4 BC to 65 AD. He was born in Spain. His father, who had the same name, and so is remembered as Seneca the Elder, was a teacher of rhetoric. His son, our Seneca, was taken to Rome when he was young. After a period spent in Egypt, an early career as a lawyer and politician, and a banishment to Corsica, he became a tutor and advisor to Nero, an emperor of odious reputation. Seneca also became very wealthy. Seneca was accused in 65 AD of joining the Pisonian conspiracy, which had unsuccessfully plotted the murder of Nero. He was ordered by the emperor to commit suicide, which he did. He cut open his veins and sat in a hot bath, though they say it was steam that finally did him in. The episode is the subject of a fine allusion in the film The Godfather Part 2. Seneca wrote letters, dialogues, and essays on philosophy, and also a number of plays. His writings are the most substantial surviving body of work on Stoicism. His wealth and political life have sometimes caused him to be condemned as an hypocrite whose life was inconsistent with his teachings. The second Stoic philosopher is Epictetus, who lived from approximately 55 to 135 AD. He was born in the region we now know as Turkey and spent most of the first half of his life in Rome. When philosophers were banished by the Emperor Domitian, Epictetus moved to Greece and established a school there. Epictetus left behind no writings. The words attributed to him are the notes of Arrian, a famous student in his school. From Arrian we have works known as the Discourses of Epictetus, as well as the Enchiridion. We also have some fragments of less certain authenticity preserved by Stovius. When you read Epictetus, it is best to imagine that you are seeing a rough transcript of what he said in class. Epictetus led a life very different from those of our other principal writers. He had a crippled leg, he was born a slave, and his later liberation gave him a curious connection to Seneca. As noted a moment ago, Seneca was accused of joining a conspiracy to murder Nero. The conspiracy was revealed in part by Epaphroditus, a secretary to the emperor. Epaphroditus was the owner of Epictetus and may have been responsible for freeing him, though this and much else in the life of Epictetus involves some conjecture. Curiously, Epaphroditus was later put to death for failing to prevent Nero's own suicide. Epictetus studied in Rome under Musonius Rufus, another Stoic who left behind no writings of his own. Musonius Rufus is probably best known now for teaching that women are as suitable for philosophical training as men. Our third thinker is Marcus Aurelius, who lived between 121 and 180 AD. In 138, the Emperor Hadrian selected his own successor, Antoninus Pius, by adopting him. Hadrian also arranged for Antoninus to adopt Marcus Aurelius, who was then a teenager. Antoninus Pius ascended to the throne soon thereafter, and was emperor for more than 20 years. Upon his death, in 160, Marcus Aurelius became emperor and reigned for nearly 20 years more. For the first 8 years in partnership with his adopted brother, Lucius Verus, and during the last few years in partnership with his son, Commodus, of whom the less said, the better. For a stretch of time in the middle, Marcus Aurelius was emperor by himself, an improbable moment in which the most powerful person in the world may have been the wisest. Mostly while on military campaigns during the last decade of his life, Marcus Aurelius wrote philosophical notes to himself in Greek that we call his meditations. He never described himself as a Stoic in his writings, but he was a devoted student of the philosophy and has long been treated as one of its defining authors. Our Roman Stoics lived overlapping lives, but just barely. The first died when the second was young, and the second died when the third was young. So far as we know, none of them had any contact with each other. Marcus Aurelius thus thanked one of his Stoic teachers, Junius Rusticus, for giving him a copy of the Discourses of Epictetus, and he occasionally quotes from that work. Stoicism covered many topics. In this series, we are going to learn about ethics. In casual current usage, ethics usually means rules about what behavior is right and wrong, particularly in how we treat other people. For philosophical purposes, though, the term also refers to larger questions about how to act and the meaning of the good life. Much of what follows belongs under that heading, though some of what the Stoics thought about ethics, including much of their theoretical apparatus, is not included. The subject of this series can also be described as psychology, a topic we regard as separate from philosophy, but that the Stoics did not distinguish from it. Most videos take as their topic some aspect of human irrationality and how it might be tamed. These inquiries of the Stoics will appeal to some readers for the same reasons they find modern cognitive psychology appealing. Understanding our own minds help us become conscious of our misjudgments, a little more perceptive, a little more self-aware, a little less stupid. In some respects, cognitive psychologists, too, can be counted as successors of the Stoic philosophers, and the Stoics anticipated a number of their findings, as we shall see. But the Stoics, while less rigorous in their methods, are more ambitious in the questions that they try to answer. They propose a way of life. They were trying to help people see more clearly, live more wisely, and bear the burdens of their lives with greater ease. Let us see how they did.